Which players do we love in 2024? Find out next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5 on Wednesday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Scott White. Like we do every year, it's the players we love. Let's start with a pitcher. Scott, who are you falling for this year?
I am falling very, very hard for Cole Ragans. If you followed us at all, if you listened to the full-length show, you know how high I am on Cole Ragans this year. I had him as a top 12 pitcher initially, and then I saw I was so out on a limb with that I had to pull him down to 16th in my rankings. I still think everyone else, they're the crazy ones for not appreciating what Cole Ragans did down the stretch last year when he moved into the Royals rotation, introduced a slider to his arsenal. All right, so at the start of the year, he picked up like 4 miles per hour on his fastball. The results weren't great even with that, but then he added a slider to his arsenal for those final 2 months in the Royals rotation, and it just rounded everything out so perfectly. 2.70 ERA, 106 whip, 11.6 K per 9 in those 11 starts. His point per game average during that stretch trailed only Garrett Cole and Spencer Strider among full season marks. So he performed like an ace by any measure, did Cole Ragans, with the introduction of that new pitch. And you look at, it's not just that pitch, all 5 of his pitches. I don't know if the slider helped him play up, but all 5 of them have good whiff rates for Cole Ragans. His fastball peaked at 101, which is amazing for a left-handed starter. So much upside here at a time in the history of the game where I think it really makes sense to sell out for upside at starting pitcher, just because the environment, so much more damage is done on contact now with all the rule changes last year. I think you want to go hard for Cole Ragans. I know I'm going to. And he is the pitcher I love this year, with an honorable mention to Eric Fetty, who nobody is drafting at all. Huge breakout in Korea last year, was their equivalent of the MVP, and Cy Young remade his arsenal completely, so it's not even comparable to what he was doing with the Nationals before. You can hear more about Eric Fetty on the full-length show.
Cole Ragans, by the way, on CBS has both starting pitcher and relief pitcher eligibility, so if you play in a points league, he's a SPARP, and obviously adds some flexibility to your roster. The ADP for Cole Ragans is the 31st starting pitcher off the board. Scott has him all the way up at SP16. The pitcher I love, it's going to be Bryan Woo! Bryan Woo of the Seattle Mariners, who had a solid rookie season, gets a good amount of whiffs, 12.5% swinging strike rate. He has a great four-seam fastball that actually has a higher swinging strike rate than that of Spencer Strider's. I think an underrated cutter and a slider there. Pitches for the Mariners, a team that has done a great job with their pitching development the past couple of years with George Kirby, Logan Gilbert. Luis Castillo has developed into a very consistent starter under them as well. So Bryan Woo, just looking at the ADP, 219.6 as the 61st starting pitcher off the board. I currently have him ranked as a top 50 starting pitcher, and always looking to wind up with Bryan Woo as either the SP4 or SP5 on my fantasy team. Scott, a hitter you love in 2024.
This was a little harder. I think we value hitters more or less appropriately this year. But the one I'm choosing here, and I know you love him too, Frank, Jake Burger.
Oh, yes.
Because when he came over to the Marlins last year, like obviously was an all or nothing guy with the White Sox, huge strikeout rate, but also high end power. Only 5 players last year hit a ball harder than Jake Burger did. Goes over to the Marlins, tones down his swing, cuts the strikeout rate from 31.6% to 21.7%. Big improvement there. Batting average goes from 214 with the White Sox to 303 with the Marlins, and yet it doesn't really compromise that power he has. Even though he played fewer games with the Marlins, 11 of his 17 hardest hit balls last year came with them. So I think, look, I mean, he hit over 30 homers last year. I don't think it's a stretch to say Jake Burger could hit 35 to 40 home runs this year with more consistent playing time, but I think the batting average is going to be a lot better than people expect. It might be as high as 270, 275, and you can get him in a 12-team league like round 13, maybe even round 14. So that Jake Berger's a big reason why I don't feel as motivated to draft an early round third baseman this year.
And the ADP is 170.4 as the 17th third baseman off the board for Jake Berger. Both Scott and I have Berger ranked as a top 15 third baseman this year, and I agree. I like him as a nice fallback option at the position as well. Hitter that I love, he's going a little bit earlier in drafts, so I'll admit I don't know how helpful this is, but it's Bryce Harper. And whenever I have an early to mid second round pick, I look for Bryce Harper. I think a lot of times it's hard to find a hitter that can profit that early in the draft, but if everything works out for Bryce Harper the way I think it could, I think he could be drafted as like a mid first round pick this time next year. So we saw what happened. He got off to the slow start, but from August 1st on, he was crushing the ball, hit over 300. The OPS was amazing. The power metrics all backed it up. He went out in the postseason, hit great there as well. If everything works and he stays healthy, I think we're looking at like a 280 plus batting average, 35 homers, 15 steals, great counting stats, and a really, really good Phillies lineup as well. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Audacy app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.